Are you a normal person? Would you say that you live a normal life? Most of us feel normal to some extent, or at least we try to be, until we're asked a simple question. What does normal actually mean? When we think about normal, we often picture the average, a single point in the middle of an array of diversity. But what we fail to see is that the average doesn't represent most people. The range does. Meet Norman and Norma. In 1943, an artist and a gynecologist came together using data from over 15,000 people to produce these statues. They were intended to represent the average American. Do they look familiar to you? Maybe like someone you know? In reality, a contest was held a few years later to find the real-life Norma, because surely somebody had to match this ideal average. But nobody did. This was the woman who won the contest, and while there were similarities, even she didn't truly match this ideal average. Norman and Norma show us that when we try to define an average as normal, we end up capturing nobody. And that's because normalcy isn't a fixed average point on a line. Normalcy lives on a spectrum. There's so much variation in our lives that the problem lies in how we each define normal differently. Normal is often a sense of comfort and connection, like knowing that you found your place in the crowd. We strive for normal because it feels like belonging. But when we chase after normalcy, we begin to lose our own identity. We mask what we truly believe in order to fit in with the crowd. Historical U.S. Army General George S. Patton puts it simply: if everyone is thinking alike, then somebody isn't thinking. It's natural for humans to think in different ways because of cognitive and lived differences. And while developing our own opinions can sometimes be difficult, that reflection on what we believe is exactly what is needed in an age where we obsess over meaningless statistics and averages. We can't let these ideal standards take over the way we express ourselves. We can't let misleading averages and statistics define the way we act, because we've been looking at the relationship between normal and diverse all wrong. We've been taught that they're opposites, that to be diverse is to step away from being normal. But that is a lie. Diversity isn't the opposite of normalcy. Diversity is the engine of normalcy, and too often we fail to realize it. We see it in the natural world, where the longest-lasting organisms reproduce unique offspring to provide biosecurity, not identical copies. Because if a forest were filled with identical copies of the same tree, it'd only take one disease to bring them to extinction. Or in music, where the most powerful compositions are often built on harmony, different notes, rhythms, and sounds, the beauty comes from the contrast, not similarity. Because if every instrument played the same note at the same time, there would be no music, just boring noise. Or in the medical field, where a healthy dosage of medicine for one patient can be lethal for another, requiring a unique dosage, not a universal standard. Because like we saw with Norman and Norma, the average body is a myth that ends up capturing nobody. We are not average. We are not a single data point, and we are certainly not statues. The average is a statue, but the spectrum of normalcy is alive. And when we begin to see normal in a way that reflects this natural diversity, the pressure to conform begins to lose its power. So the next time you find yourself shrinking your opinion to fit the room, or masking your weirdness to match the average, pause. Say what you actually think. Ask the question that feels a little out of place. Because when our workplaces, classrooms, and industries begin to sound the same, we lose perspective. We fall to groupthink, and eventually we stop growing. Real change happens when people don't just feel heard, but they have the freedom to be heard authentically. Imagine if we carried that mindset into every room we walked into. What if being normal wasn't about fitting in, but about making room? So don't filter yourself down to a single point. Embrace your place on the spectrum instead. Because we don't need more statues. We need more people willing to think, speak, and live from their place on the spectrum. Thank you.